Hello everybody and welcome to you all. I hope that by the end of this session you will agree that your time has been well spent. My name is Mike Sheldon. I have the immense privilege of being the chair of your Pork Sector Council. I'm accompanied today by 4 members of that Sector Council: Hugh Crabtree, Rob Beckett, Rob Mutimer and Mark Heighton. We also have with us a number of the members of the AHDB team, experts in their field, and so if we have any questions where we need them to help us with the answers, they're on hand to give us to be there. We also have Angela Christensen, who is with us, who is going to field the questions and help guide us through this process and keep us generally in line. We are representatives of the Sector Council, but there is a wider Sector Council than that, and one of the things I want to assert is that it is a balanced team. We have both producers and processors. We have large and small. We have indoor, outdoor. We have the various regions of England represented. And we also have an independent member of the Sector Council who will keep us in line if we seem to be going astray from normal practice. This is an important day. It's a milestone in the journey that we have in transforming the organisation, as Nicholas has referred to. It's neither the beginning nor the end of the process, but it is an important milestone. We set out to make the relationship between levy payers and AHDB tighter and more responsive, so that AHDB could respond more quickly and more directly to the challenges facing all our levy payers. We wanted to put ourselves in a position where our levy payers had a greater influence over our prioritisation and over what we were doing, and greater familiarity also with what we were doing, so that everybody knew what AHDB was doing on their behalf. We carried out the Shape the Future survey earlier in the year, and we asked all our levy payers to tell us what was important to them about our activities. We had a great turnout from the pork sector. We're really very pleased. We had more than 50% of the pigs produced represented in the survey, and more than 75% of the pigs slaughtered represented in the survey. That is a terrific mandate for any group to operate with, and I'm very grateful to you all for taking the trouble to take part in the survey. If you didn't get the opportunity to take part in the survey this time, then we will be repeating it in due course, and I would encourage you to register and vote next time. What we've done since then is we've been considering the results of that survey in detail, and the plan that we've published today, and that I encourage you all to download from our website, is the product. It's the product of the views that were expressed to us by you, and the product of the deliberations which the Sector Council has carried out on your behalf since then. Today, the purpose of today is to discuss or begin the discussion of that plan with you. So I would encourage you all to pose questions, as Roseanne has invited you to do, and we will do our best to respond to those in due course. This isn't a one-off. We will repeat the process, or we will find other ways of reaching out to levy payers to find out what you think, what your priorities are, and what you think of our activities on your behalf. We have a plan, but nothing is set in stone. If circumstances change or views change, then the plan will change as well. The Sector Council was very determined to take the Shape the Future results seriously, and we have done, and we were very keen to act on the views expressed. Of course, our discussions were influenced by the rather dreadful market conditions that all of you have been enduring over at least the last year. Of course, our discussions were influenced by that. But we also have a responsibility to lift our eyes from the page and look into the future and think about the challenges which are coming down the track, which might not be priorities today, but are going to be very important to all of you in due course. One of the other things we've had to do is to take into account the expected severe reduction in our levy income in the next year or so. After the market conditions of the last year, it's highly likely that slaughter pig numbers will go down, and if the slaughter pig numbers go down, then so will our levy income, and we have to factor that into our plans as well. That has made life quite difficult. So we have taken a number of difficult decisions Some of them might not be universally popular, but we have weighed up all the evidence we had to hand and taken those decisions on your behalf, and that's what we want to discuss today. You told us that your priorities for levy funds were centred around our post-farm gate work. You told us that while all our work was important, some of it was more important than others. There was a range of views, of course, there is always going to be a range of views, but actually there was a very strong common thread coming through from the views expressed by all sorts of different people. There were differences between the views expressed, sometimes between larger companies and family firms, sometimes between integrators and independent producers. But again, on the whole, there were more similarities than there were differences, and this was very encouraging for the council. So we're going to get into some detail about what the plan says, but just as a matter of headline, our focus in our sector plan is on three things. Our focus is on marketing, exports, and reputation. We're going to devote about 40% of our funds to building and protecting the place that pork has in the consumer's mind in our country. Influencing attitudes is long-term work, and it's challenging. It's particularly challenging in the light of some of the changes to consumer habits, which we're all very well aware of at the moment. But we can demonstrate a track record of remarkable success, and we're very confident that we will be able to continue to do so on your behalf. We're going to devote about a third of your levy funds to building on the success of British pork exports. We perform a vital role in winning access to overseas markets, satisfying the veterinary and technical requirements that are needed in order to be able to sell into those markets, and in assisting our exporters make contacts with traders and purchasers in those markets. And of course, we back all that up with a presence at a number of different shows around the world. This work brings significant value to every pig produced in this country, and it supports farm gate prices. The balance of our funds, about 27% of your levy payer funds, are devoted to supporting the reputation of the pork sector. This is about giving substance to and shouting about the reputation of pork within England. This involves a wide range of work. There's a lot of work going into supporting reputation. It involves our work on animal health and welfare. It involves our work to do with the environment. And it also involves our work, the investment we make in educating consumers of the future, a piece of work that we're particularly proud of. So those are our three priorities within our sector plan: marketing, exports, reputation. And we're going to have a bit more detail about that now from members of the council, and then we will get into questions. But that's enough from me for now, and I'm going to hand over to Angela.
Well, thank you, Mike. A really good, clear introduction, and thank you to everybody who's joined. It's so good to see the numbers that responded to the Shape the Future vote, to see how many people have registered here today. Thank you all for being here. I get to witness you having your discussions, debating, really concentrating on what the levy payers have asked you to do. And I know it has not been easy. And I wanted that actually to be my first question to you, Mike. You know, you've been chairing this, what was previously the board, now is the council. How has it been this year? You've had limited funds, you've had the clearest voice ever from the levy payers asking for what they want to see done with their levy. Has it been difficult? You say three themes like that. It sounds easy. Was it?
Well, I'm going to give you an economist's answer to that. On the one hand, it's been pretty difficult, actually, because when you have a range of work which is all valuable, then making choices about which is the most valuable is inevitably rather difficult, and there are differences of opinion, and it becomes quite painful. It becomes quite painful to say no to work which is otherwise valuable. On the other hand, the economist, it's been quite easy, actually. It's been made easier by this process, because we weren't just relying on our own views and our own experience and our own knowledge. We had a database from you, the levy payer, with a very clear message or a series of very clear messages about what was important to you. And that helped us make some very difficult decisions. I wouldn't say easily, but we were comfortable in making those decisions.
And it is interesting, isn't it? Because I saw the reference keep going back to, wait a minute, what did the levy payers tell us was important? Because when you're debating these things, they're often complex and there's lots of different things to think about. Not only what's happening now in the industry, but what's coming down the lane. So lots of nods, and I know we want to get into the thick of it. So 3 themes: marketing, exports, and reputation. Marketing came out very strongly, no surprise actually there, 40%, big slug of the levy going towards it. Rob, you are absolutely passionate about this area, so I'd like to come to you and just say, can you just remind us all, what does AHDB principally do in this area?
Well, I'd follow that. I was very pleased that marketing came out on top, because after working with the marketing team now for 5.5 years, it's with great pride I've seen what they've done and what they continue to strive to do. But AHDB is unique in the way that we can market pork out to the consumers of this country, and that is our most important market still. We work with all the major processors, and we also work with all the major supermarkets, and I don't believe there's any other organisation that can do that. And Liam and his team organise promotional campaigns that actually are very joined up in their approach, and we do that to make sure that the levy payers are getting maximum bang for their buck in what we spend for. And coming from a farming background where I've had nothing to do with high-level marketing, it's been a really big education on just how joined up that approach has been. And we run certain marketing pillars during the year. In the autumn, we run the Feed the Family for Less, which is very good planning on the team's part for this year with the spending crisis. And then also in the January time, we'll bring in Mix Up Meals campaign, where we'll look to promote the healthy benefits of eating pork at a time when everyone's looking to be more healthy, and again, looking at protein that feeds a family for less.
Okay, so it's about dialing it up and dialing it down, depending on the time of year, the cuts that we've got, working with the whole supply chain to make sure we optimise things.
Yeah, it is. And also, we're using different medias to actually get our message across. And, the TV is the big one, the big bucks and everything else. But the team make sure that all coincides with work that's done with all the supermarkets and the processors to make sure we've got the product when we're doing the promotions, which is really important, but takes quite a lot of time to tie up. And then the bit that dinosaurs like me find interesting is how they tie that up with social media and working down to talking about Gen Zs, which is something.
But of course, we're not the target audience, are we? Because we're not wavering about eating pork, thank goodness. We're talking about identifying, consumers that are thinking about, well, should I carry on with this? And do I have permission to eat? Do I have the appetite to eat it? So that's, as you say,
challenging the mainstream rather than our own family type of things. And it's very interesting what they do. It's absolutely brilliant what some of these do to actually promote pork. So we get a long-term attitudinal change to eating pork, how it sits in our baskets going forward, whether it is healthy, whether it's convenient for a family life, and at the moment, more important than anything, it's a very reasonably priced protein.
Yeah, and in that way, it's quite exciting times for pork, isn't it?
Because the marketing department is always very exciting. That's one of the things. Well, it's a very exciting place to be, and seeing how we promote for the long term. We've got to keep people eating pork in this country, and show them that it's healthy, show them it fits into our busy lifestyles, and what these guys do is absolutely great. And I think, again, an individual company or individual supermarket doing a campaign like this doesn't have a buy and the cut through that it has when you do it across the board. And it's really encouraging.
Really, really encouraging, really interesting. I keep flicking my eyes down here, not because you're boring, but because there's some nice questions coming in. Is he now? So one question. that came in is why can't AHD promote British pork? Why can't we use the word British now that we've left the EU?
We would love to use the word British, and it's something that comes up all the time, but unfortunately it is illegal for AHDB to use the word British. Due to state aid rules after Brexit, we agreed to bring across a lot of rules from Europe and cut and paste them basically into UK legislation. And that means it is illegal for AHDB to put the Union Jack on every product or shout that it's British. We do put the Red Tractor logo on, which is the best we can do, and things, but you just can't ask people to do something that's illegal at the moment, and maybe we're lobbying going forward, we can actually get that changed. But at the moment it's illegal, and there's also WTO issues there as well that have to be thought out. Unfortunately, it's a complicated issue, and it's also very infuriating, both to us and the levy payers.
And the value of the trade, Mike, you know, because obviously we wouldn't want to ever do anything that jeopardise the value of the trade, and you know, it's something I know you've spoken about, Mike.
Well, that's right, because I mean, very often with these sorts of things, it is a matter of trade-off, and the reality is that our exports, 560 million plus a year, are going all around the world. They would be in jeopardy if we broke either state aid rules or if we broke WTO rules. Those exports would be in jeopardy, and so we wouldn't dream of taking too many risks in that regard, because the value of those exports is so important to us and so important to our levy payers.
Okay, so another question coming in though is, how can AHDB have a British meat dinner at this Seattle show but not be able to use British in its marketing? What's the difference there, Mike?
I think that there are two answers to the question, actually. One is that the rules are slightly different for a dinner like the British meat dinner at Seattle. That's not a consumer-facing event; it's a trade event. So the audience within the guest list are part of the meat trade. They are both exporters from the UK and importers from Europe and all around the world, and traders, and that is the audience there. And when you're talking to that audience, then there's the same state aid rules don't apply in the same way. But on the other hand, I would say that that is an example of AHDB finding the absolute limits of the rules. So we at all times, we will sail as close as we dare to the wind. So we will push those rules without breaking them.
Okay, so we optimise that, but we don't go too far to jeopardise any trade, because that trade is so valuable. All right, so another question. We measure attitudes. Measure attitudes towards pork rather than actual sales volumes. Sometimes we get indications to that. You know, what's your thought on that? I'm looking at you, Rob. You're a producer. You know, you're producing this thing. You want to sell it. Why would we have AHDB measuring attitude?
Well, attitude is the be all and end all, really. I mean, ultimately, what we really want is, as you say, to be able to sell all of our pigs for the best price, particularly with the domestic market. Mike was saying about how important that is. It's still our largest market. Whatever happens with export or whatever happens elsewhere, the domestic market, retail, consumers, that is our main target, and we always have to focus on that. Just going back to one of the points that Mike made about why would we not push the boundaries further, and you touched on it gently, is that the EU is still our biggest market, and I believe last year about 37% of our products was going to Europe, and since then it's increased to 40%. So it is still that is still a very significant market for us that we need to focus on. And you know, thankfully with Liam and his team, these real professional people that we've got who are working on our behalf, they really are far cuter than us as producers or processors, and they have just a wonderful ability to be able to find use that reputational stuff and focus the market, I think.
We're also trying to plant ideas into the consumer's mind, because if we can get that message across, then yes, there will be a response during a particular campaign, but we want to have that idea kept in the minds of consumers, you know, so that it's
Like a
up there.
portable positive.
It's up there, and oh yeah, I remember that. That's they did tell me that, you know, pork was a good source of B12 or whatever, you know, whatever it is that's tickled them to make them make the selection. It's important.
Yeah, and they carry that people carry that whether they're in store, walking past Greg's or in the pub or whatever. So, right, good questions coming in here. Some of these I'm loving. There's one I'm going to keep back a little bit because it's to do with exports, and we'll come back to that. It's actually to do with imports, but we will come back to it. So, I love this. Could we please promote British pork for Christmas? It's awful what's happening to the poultry sector, but we must promote pork as the perfect Christmas meal. This is interesting, isn't it? Because, we are excited about pork. We're obviously very sad about what's happening in other industries, but pork is such good value.
Clear opportunity, definitely. And so anything that we can do, and that's people like me who can get out there and, you know, post on the socials, just keep battering away, reminding people that this is a really good value product. And if you're struggling to find poultry meat for whatever reason, and I agree with you, that's a disaster for that particular sector. But, you know, one sector's disaster inevitably becomes another sector's opportunity, and it was ever thus.
Yeah.
It's we aren't trying to batter away at other meat proteins. You know, most of our competition is actually a completely different foodstuff. You know, cornflakes, you know, is a competitor for the bacon sandwich in the morning. So anything that all individuals, all stakeholders in the sector can do to just keep nudging away at, hey, can we, how about thinking about pork? We're actually going to be doing it in my household. I shall be cooking a shoulder of pork in my smoker for our Christmas lunch.
Okay.
Sorry, I was going to add, it's probably,
Of course.
it's probably just worth mentioning that we've already really begun through the Feed the Family for Less promotion, the promotion of pork in the run-up to Christmas, because that promotion will run up until the end of November. And we do have different channels that we talk to consumers through. The taste and enjoyment piece we tend to pick up through social media and our digital website, Love Pork. We have over 1 million visitors to that website every year. And we are already in planning to put a focus around gammon recipes in the run-up to Christmas, just to inspire more people and remind them to cook. An interesting fact, we sell more gammon over the Christmas period than we do turkey.
Interesting. I know from the people at the side, we've got 5 minutes left. I've got a couple on this topic, not totally. There's a really good one here. AHDB can't promote British, but could we work better with organisations such as Farm Retail Association, Q Guild, National Craft Butchers to get the Feed the Family for Less campaign spread further? Hard copy recipe books used to go out to butcher shops. I'm not sure the online equivalent is there.
As a high street butcher myself, we do get some very good material through from AHDB on all proteins actually, and put a point of sale material. It's there, and it does point people to the website to look at the recipes on how to cook gammons at Christmas and all the rest of it. So maybe we can do some more, but certainly as a butcher, I feel that we get a lot of information through and a lot of point of sale material.
Okay, so that's first hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. So I just wanted to sort of wrap up this marketing side by just looking at the import side. So it says here, why are we allowing double the import of pig meat when our own markets are in dire straits? Why are we?
Well, if only the rules for importing were in our hands at AHDB, then we might be in a better place. The reality is that the rules for imports are set by the UK government. And when they are setting those rules, I don't need to apologise for them, but when they are setting their rules, they have to take into account both the quid pro quo, because we are exporters as well. And so when it comes to managing trade relations with all those other countries, what you do about protecting your market from imports, there's the other side of the coin about that might have negative effects on your ability to export. So government sets the rules. Our colleagues at MPA and NFU and other professional associations, they will lobby like Billy-O on behalf of their members to make sure that the rules are set fairly and make sure that the rules are set so that we in the UK have a chance of surviving with our businesses. And that is quite correct. What we do at AHDB, our role, we inform both the NPA and government. So we provide the data and the evidence to NPA to be able to go and lobby, and that relationship works really well. We also, quietly, we don't necessarily make a big song and dance about this because we aren't a lobbying organisation. We provide data and information to government in order to help them form their rules, in our view, properly. And when we do that, we push as hard as we can, but we stop short of the line of lobbying. The reality is that we don't always get what we want, of course, because there is a balance to be struck, always between import and export.
Okay. I did want to ask, we talked about budgetary constraints. We've talked about all that we do. We were running the pork-specific campaigns, and we were also chipping into the wheat balance campaigns. We've got less money this year. What's been the discussions on that, and where's it got to?
We knew we were going to lose a deal of money, and we've looked at it hard, and we felt that for this year, and maybe for this year alone, that it was really important we really concentrate all our efforts on the pork-specific marketing in the home. So I'm afraid that means that marketing with other sectors, and that's been happening, we balanced has been put to one side for this year, and we will be concentrating our budget on our own marketing of pork in this country.
So we're cutting our cloth, we're pausing at the moment, we're keeping an eye on it.
But that doesn't mean in the future we can't go back,
come back.
because that was a very good advertising campaign, and it's not something we gave away lightly. But
Okay.
I'm afraid for this year we will be concentrating on pork.
It might not be possible for us to get through all the questions, but I do want to just ask this one before we wrap up on marketing. As Roseanne said, we will get back to you on all the questions, but here's one. The survey didn't provide the opportunity to ask if the levy rate is correct, or if the split between processor and producer is correct. When the processor levy was introduced, it was towards marketing. If the marketing spend is increasing, should the processor pay more? I'm going to go to you, Mike, first, just for your views, but I'd welcome any others.
It's true that in this survey we didn't ask what levy payers thought about the levy rate prevailing at the moment. We didn't ask that question. We've taken a view that, given market circumstances over the last year and still prevailing right now, it's still not the right time to ask the question of levy payers. But we are signalling that we think that conversation needs to start. I think the way I look at it is that if we can work in such a way that all our levy payers are convinced of the value of what we are doing, then we can ask the question, how much do you want to invest in these sorts of activities? And my idea would be we would reach a situation where the levy rate was set because that's what levy payers want it to be. That's what they want us to invest on their behalf. We haven't reached that point yet, but that's what I see in the next few months, or certainly next year. As far as the split between producer and processor levy is concerned, I think perhaps that should form part of that conversation, exactly.
Rob, what do you think?
If I could reassure the levy payer and the producer that the council have debated that at length, and we took a lot of time to be able to really consider that question. which was put. I know Mike's covered it, that maybe for another day, the actual levy amounts, that there will be a question that comes out to the levy payers. But after thrashing it out between the whole council, we believed at the time that we were going to leave it put because the industry was in such a difficult time. But I'm sure that's a question for another day that we'll come back to.
We have touched upon it, haven't we, to start with, and we did decide to not kick it down the road, but let's just see how things pan out over the course of this next year when we know that there will be a reduction in the levy coming through. But I think it's obvious that with less money available, and in order to keep doing the good work on marketing, to keep doing the good reputational stuff, to keep export markets thriving and also opening new export markets, we will need to have more money or need to keep the levy total at around about where it is. And if that means more spend, then
we have to have that conversation.
At least, yes.
Yeah. And I think that is certainly the events I've been out and about in, people are having that conversation. So that's the whole point of this, isn't it? To keep that dialogue open.
There's another strong reason. I mean, the levy has been stable for some years now. And just the effect of inflation, even at a low rate over a prolonged period of time, has an impact, obviously, on net revenue. Everybody knows we're in a period of quite high inflation. I'm old enough to remember inflation rates, well
now,
into
look,
double
Hugh,
figures.
let's not go back to the 70s.
But it's all before that. But that obviously has a big impact. So that will be another factor that determines that,
Absolutely.
that debate.
Now, we could talk about our domestic market all day. Thank you very much, Liam. I'm going to bring in our expert now, Phil Hadley, who a lot of you will know is our export director, because we're going to travel overseas. Pork trade is hugely valuable. So there's a whole world out there. There's a lot of trade in pig meat. We've got a fantastic product. It's got great integrity. Mark, I can see straight away, from a processor angle, it's really important. So I'm going to ask you in a moment just to go through what AHDB do, how it feels from your side of things. But I'm going to come to you, Rob, as a producer, and just see how it feels from your side as well, because you're not directly exporting, but we'll come back to you and see what you think. So.
No, well, the export question has been debated, over the 5 or so years that I've been involved, and our export team do a marvellous job. I know in 2021, I think we were exporting to 98 countries, exported a volume of in excess of 350,000 tonnes, each one of that value is, I believe, worth nearly £50 a pig to us all. And so it is an enormous value to us as producers. So whether we're a producer or a processor, that value is definitely there.
Okay. So it's underpinning that market price here, keeping it honest.
Particularly in balancing the carcass.
Okay. So, poor Mark, you've stolen lots of his lines.
Pretty much everything.
Pretty much everything.
Really good.
But obviously, we as AHDB work really closely with you as processors. How does that feel from your side of things? What does it look like?
Well, it's great. I mean, being in it all together, there's a lot of work that goes on in identifying, firstly, new markets to expand into. Recently, I think Vietnam and Mexico have been identified as potential export destinations for our high-quality pig meat, and we were more than happy to host an AHDB sponsored tour by a Vietnamese delegation. We took them to an abattoir, we took them to a finishing farm, and to explain all about what goes on and all the good things that we do in the UK to produce top-quality pig meat. So it's those sorts of things that the AHDB do very well, to unlock new markets, to keep current markets going, to put on trade fairs and events in overseas destinations, to attract customers in those countries to a single place, to see delegations from all of the UK processors, all the main, UK processors, and basically we're selling our wares and we're selling the UK pig. So it's very valuable, and it's well worth, I think, the 33% of the levy that is put towards this specific area.
It's pretty thrilling, isn't it, when you stand on... You went out to Seattle, a couple of weeks ago. It's high energy, isn't it? It's high octane. You feel the buzz. You can feel the trade almost happening.
I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to go to Seattle. It's huge. It is a huge show. It's all food products, not just meat. But the meat hall is huge. And what's extraordinary is you see, for example, the Argentinian stand. Well, they have 4 stands, one of which is just devoted to lunch. There's the Uruguayans there. There's the Brazilians. It's my kind of place. There's everyone there. But it was fantastic for me to be. When you walk through the hall and you're looking for your stand to go and visit, it hoves into view beautifully, like a lovely sailing ship coming over the horizon. You see the great brand at the head of the stand with the Union flag there, and our stand was just buzzing. It was just buzzing. It was absolutely packed from dawn till dusk, as far as I could see, and it was packed not with time wasters, as far as I could see. It was packed with our exporters and their customers and their prospective customers doing business and making contacts, building those networks, building those relationships. And it's just terrific that we, the UK, the English pork sector, AHDB, are part of that world. It's absolutely energising.
So obviously we're looking to de-risk, we're looking to send every bit of the carcass to the best place for the best amount of money. It's a really good question here about getting licences. So what are AHDB doing about getting the 3 pork abattoirs who've lost their site approval for exporting to China to get reapproved? Phil, I'm going to bring you in here because I know you have very good relationships all over the world and you're very close to this subject.
Yeah, so the history here is related to COVID. So China's been really good for our pork exports. It's a friendly destination. And it's continued to grow. However, during the COVID time, there was a demand of any country that had a shown issue, then we export. So that's the position. I think lots of other However, we now experienced almost 2 years or around 2 years of plants not reapproved to export to China. We're in regular dialogue with UK government and industry and are working tirelessly to re-accelerate that so those plants are relisted, so that really valuable trade can recommence. But it is a very, very slow process, and you can imagine the Chinese government are evaluating the corrective action measures and all the documentation that goes with that. They have a myriad of those requested from lots of other countries. We are making progress, but it is very, very slow, but we don't waste or miss any opportunity to try and accelerate that. And I am really hopeful that we'll see a resolution to that because it's critical for the sector and we'll see a resolution. When I can't actually say, but we don't underestimate the impact, nor are we sitting idle. We need this to happen.
Thank you, Phil.
Has dialogue with China shown any sign of waking up again?
Yes, but very slowly. You know, initially there was effectively a halting in dialogue, of course, of the pandemic. It is purely an issue with the pandemic and the perceived risk of virus transfer through frozen product. It isn't a UK issue, it's a global issue. The Chinese have a very long list of plants that are being suspended and relisted for ongoing problems. We've provided the documentation. A dialogue is ongoing, but it isn't resolved yet, and we're continuing to work hard with industry and government to try and move that forward.
Thank you. I'm going to come closer to home here. There's a question about Ireland. So Ireland is not a low-cost producer of grains or pork, but its pig sector has a much better export performance than the GB sector. Why? What is AHDB learning from looking at others? And does it try and do this? Do we try and look at others? And, you know, there are some great, I mean, Ireland's one of them. There's other great exporting nations. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a few underlying dynamics that make that the case, of course. You know, Ireland's a huge exporter of beef as well. They're a big producer, modest population, so they are driven for export, so they drive their export markets very hard. We, and I think Mark might want to add here, have a really strong domestic market, so actually we have product export in the first instance, but that doesn't mean to say we don't want to export those additional parts of the carcass to add value. We look very closely at what our near European neighbours, including Ireland, Denmark, France, Holland, for example, are doing in that marketplace.
So, thank you. That's really interesting. Again, another subject we could carry on with. I want to make sure we talk about reputation. It's our third theme. So I'm going to come to Hugh here. There's probably not many people who are more passionate about the reputation of the British pig industry than you, Hugh. This is a big area of work. It encompasses a lot of things. Hugh, just walk us through what is the AHDB doing in this arena?
The aim is to promote and protect the reputation of the British pig industry in the marketplace. That's the aim. And the activities, which I'll say some more about, consume about 27% of the spend. So it's the sort of third chunk of the expenditure. What do we do? The first thing is we monitor, if you like, all media to try and keep an eye on issues as they come along, and to try and get onto the front foot to challenge misinformation and provide balance where there are views expressed by others. Of course, as we know in this life, people out there are entitled to their opinions and they're entitled to express them without any need to justify them, but they're often misleading. So that's a really important job that we do. And there's some really clever technology that's involved with social media particularly, which automatically monitors postings to spot things that are relevant to our sector so that we can immediately respond and put balance into the argument. So that's the first thing. The second area of work is if there is a big issue that emerges, and as we know, and certainly the experience I have in the National Pig Association, there are some big challenges going on as various organisations, activist organisations, really have a go. It's really important that we have a body, an independent body, that can facilitate response to that on an industry-wide basis. So the AHDB has a really important role in that, working obviously with colleague organisations like the National Pig Association and the National Farmers Union. And it's really important that numbers are available as well. And that brings me on to another section of work in reputation support. AHDB is the sort of repository of industry statistics. In fact, as Phil will confirm, we generate a lot of them in order that we have more knowledge about our sector. And so AHDB has a really important role in responding to consultation from government and from others. And with respect to what goes on in this regard, that's a straight question that is put to the industry. AHDB responds, but also with respect to compliance issues. How are we doing with respect to compliance. And a really good example of that is background work that goes on in the development of things like EML2, which obviously is work done for DEFRA, but then the work on the electronic medicines book, for example, which I've been very close to. Really important and an absolutely fantastic example of industry-wide collaboration, the levy body, prime producers, other stakeholders, veterinarians particularly, working together to report a fantastic success in the reduced use of antimicrobials. So, fantastic, really important. The last little bit, education, which you mentioned earlier, of which we're justifiably very proud. We need to be constantly informing consumers about what an excellent product pork is, great food stuff, how it's produced, where it comes from. But there's a particular focus on young people. And for example, AHDB Pork funds Ladies in Pigs. And they do fantastic work at providing curriculum content for schools.
So I'm conscious, because this is really good, we've got lots of questions coming in. We've talked about, reputation, and here it says, you say that reputation has three important aspects for consumers, health, animal health, and welfare and environment. However, you've had to stop some work in that area, and actually I can see there's other questions on the pig health scheme, for example. Can you just talk through, how, I'm going to come to you, Rob, I know this is an area.
Yeah, well, clearly we've had some really difficult decisions to make. One of the things that we definitely wanted to do was to listen to the levy payers. We understood that it wasn't of the highest scoring and priority from the levy payers survey, and most importantly, like everyone else challenged with costs, the likelihood is that our budget is going to be reduced by 20%. And earlier we've talked about reducing expenditure across the board, such as marketing, and this was an area that again was debated at length with processors and producers, and unfortunately, whilst everything was important to us before, when we've got a smaller budget, this was an area that we decided was not as important as others. So one of those difficult decisions was made, and we decided that it was one that fell where we couldn't support it.
I think there was also the point on that was that CCIR should be the vehicle for giving good health information back to the producers. Now, arguably, it's broken, because I've seen some of the CCIR information that comes back, and sometimes it's far from accurate. And so I think we decided that there's something in place to feed that information back. What can we do to ensure that that information is as good as it can be? I don't think it will be as good as the pig health scheme, but we won't have to pay for it. So there's going to be some work that's done on that to drive that forward over the next couple of years.
I've got a long memory. I remember probably about 15 years ago, BPEX, our predecessor, was discussing the pig health scheme and CCIR. And the decision at the time was that we really only needed one programme to be functioning, as long as it functioned properly. And we decided at that time we would keep pig health scheme going for a while until CCIR could be fixed. And we're still doing it, and CCIR isn't fixed. I'm hoping that one of the things that may emerge from this is a determination on the part of all parties to make that other system work and stop having a parallel system with the pig health scheme. So I think the pig health scheme has been useful, but it's not the best investment of levy payer funds available to us now. And that's one of the tough decisions we've had to make.
Okay.
And the other thing, Angela, is whenever you have, I know there will be people who hold certain aspects of work dear to their hearts. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
And if that particular piece of work it has to be dropped for budgetary considerations, then naturally enough the response is, well, you never asked us about it.
Right, I'm going to come on to that because we've got a really good point here from somebody. I found the survey to be too simplistic. It missed following A, is the levy set at the right level? B, who should pay? Is the split between producer and processor correct, given that the supply is so dysfunctional? And I can now see, Meryl, that's from you. I couldn't see it when it was smaller on my screen. So that's from Meryl Ward. So it was difficult, wasn't it? This is the first time we've done this exercise. How detailed do we go? Do we go really, really detailed and it switches people off and they say, I'm not spending that time? Do you go high level? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it is the first time such an undertaking has been engaged with, and so there's just bound to be stuff that we might do different the next time around. And there is definitely a determination that there will be a next time round. Quite possibly we'll have an opportunity to do a next time round sooner, rather than later, sooner than the 5 years.
And that's something, as all of us are out and about, we want to hear about, don't we? How can we improve on this? How can we do it better? How could we up our engagement? Because it's been great in increasing this engagement, hasn't it?
More engagement in the last 6 months, and I'm 5 years on the sector council. I've had more engagement in the last 6 months than I've had in the previous 5 years. So let's start. We have come a long, long way from where everything's, but we do need to hear from people whether they want to have a more detailed opinion on these things, and some people do. But whatever about the survey said, it did give us a clear direction as a sector council to make decisions, and we have made those decisions and we have to live by them. But it's been a clear steer. We can look at it again going forward, whether we make it more detailed, but at least people are now asking questions, finding what their levy's doing, things like that. And I think people have got a better understanding of what their levy's doing now as well.
Given the level of engagement on the first initial survey, we were heartened by that, and people are engaged and people do care about these issues, and we can go a bit more detailed next time around, be that 5 years' time, be that 2 years' time.
Okay, so it's a conversation. If people want to have it deeper, we're very open to that. I am just going to go, because there's some good questions coming in here. There's on a similar theme here, why has the pig health scheme been discontinued without consultation? The positive, I want to go to this one. The positive reputation of the UK pig sector underpins both the domestic and international marketing side of things and marks us out from the rest. How can AHDB justify the removal of these important areas, and they've listed pig health scheme, real welfare, and the research that goes on, when other areas rely so heavily on it? And it is true, these things are interdependent, aren't they, these three themes?
They are interdependent, and the test that we tried, the test that we applied was, is there duplication out there? Are other people engaged in this area of work? If so, then should we cede that ground to the other party and keep out, rather than waste money by duplication? How effective is the work that we are doing? Is it still as effective as it was last year? Or could it be developed or replaced with another piece of work? Could alternative funders be found? And so what we aimed to do was to say we will make sure we concentrate on the things which are unique to AHDB and which in our judgment and according to the data deliver the absolute maximum value. And so, for example, the electronic medicines book work has delivered massive, the improvement that producers have made in reducing their antibiotic use has been a massive fillip to the reputation of the pork sector in this country. And the EMB that AHDB operates has been part of that, and an essential part of that. And no one else can do it. So we absolutely have to do that. When it comes to some of the other work, other people could do it, or other people could fund it, or other people already are doing it. And so that's the reason that lies behind those choices, difficult as they are.
I would just add that we have to remember the budgetary effects. So one, the 20% reduction in the budget that we're going to see in the next 12 months, but also the point that Hugh made earlier on about the inflationary pressures over the value over the last 10 years since the levy was set. And so we've basically got a lot less money now to spend when those things were valued. The other part of it is, and it's come out in a couple of questions, that maybe a lot of the questions weren't those questions that you people would have answered. Perfectly justified and good questions. The levy payer survey was one element where you can have a view. The other great view is you can make, and probably more progress you can make, is being a sector member. And sector members, we only do a certain amount of a term, and know that there'll be 3 positions that will be coming up for re-election reappointment in the new year. So 25% of the board will be replaced in the spring. And you guys, if you feel really strongly about this is your opportunity to put your name forward, and then you will have a far greater opportunity to be able to change the direction that the council and AHDB Pork are running.
Another aspect of that is that, because I'm the new kid on the block, of course, here, but I expect there to be feedback from levy payers. I expect some of it to be quite robust. Why wouldn't it be? You can't please all of the people all of the time, and as budgetary constraints really grip, a reduction in the amount of levy revenue as well as the impact of inflation, then obviously you have to cut the cloth. But even though the inquiry that has recently been made through Shape the Future has got, at least on the face of it, a 5-year cycle, when the levy body will be obliged to do the same sort of inquiry of levy payers. However, the sector council members have to be ratified on a 12-month cycle. So there's clearly an opportunity for levy payers to mark the essay rather more frequently, and it's not going to be like a government election kind of a thing. That's not what it is. But nevertheless, there's an opportunity for levy payers to express their views in that way. The very fact that sector council members are sat on this live stream event should be message enough that the whole tenure of the thing is trying to be more flexible, more connected, more desirous of hearing what people have got to say. When this particular event is finished in 25 minutes or whatever it is, that's not the end of the story. It's really just the beginning, and that's what levy payers should get hold of.
Okay, so I'm looking at the questions here. There's and obviously you guys out there are voting on what you want to talk about, and I just want to mention real welfare. We've mentioned pig health scheme, and you've given some particular answers on that. So here we've got one. Real welfare is a world-leading programme. How is this data fed into market trade negotiations? Losing this is a disaster to defending and promoting our reputation, which is a key theme. So, Mike, we know this. We know that data and evidence is really important, and this was a source of data and evidence. Are there other sources? How else can we work?
Well, I think that's the question. That's the question for the industry and for the sector council is what do we do next? Because the goal for real welfare is to demonstrate to a number of different audiences, whether that's consumers, government, NGOs, media, whoever that might be, was to demonstrate that pig producers in this country know what they're doing when it comes to looking after the animals in their care. That was the objective, and it has been successful. And we have generated a massive data set to demonstrate the criteria that we were measuring with real welfare, which aren't all the criteria to do with animal welfare, but the criteria we were measuring. We've built up this massive data set. We have published periodically, and one of the things we've noticed is that in the first few years of the real welfare programme, there were significant changes in the results coming back from the participating farms. In the latter years, there weren't. And that suggested to us that most of the gain of that particular programme of work had been delivered. And so therefore that means that the value of the work goes down over time. And that's what lay behind the decision. But and there's always been a debate about the real welfare programme, about, well, it doesn't tell you this and it doesn't tell you that, and it's not the whole story, and that's true. And it's also true that some of our customers, some of our retail customers, have taken the real welfare programme in and then have moved on, because they are looking for differentiation, they are looking for their own story.
Again, Mike, we debated this quite long and hard. And the question, well, I asked the question, we've had so many incursions on farms in the last 5, 8, 10 years by animal welfare activists. At no point did I see anybody pull out from a bag to say, well, actually, the real welfare score for this farm was 10 out of 10. No one used that. This information has not been used for anything in my mind. And it was quite an easy decision, again, from my point of view, to say, cull it.
So I'm just very conscious that we've got a fairly limited time. We've really talked quite a lot about the difficult decisions that you've had to make, and the difficult decisions in terms of cutting work that probably in an ideal world you wouldn't have wanted to. And it's with mixed feelings we see these questions coming through, because it's great
18
that
months ago we wouldn't have had this conversation, because we weren't looking at losing a very substantial amount of our budget. I mean, I look at my own personal business at home and say, we've looked at what we are doing on farm in a big way. What can we cut? What can we cut to make sure that we're here for the future? We've had to do exactly the same here. And I think bringing on pig health schemes, really important one. I had a light bulb moment when I was walking through a German abattoir on an AHDB trip, looking at they were getting real-time data back on the lung scores of their pigs straight away on every batch that came through. And then when you ask, why am I not getting that from CCIR? And we now have to go away from here and put pressure to make sure that we are getting good data back. So yes, we have stopped a scheme, and it will cause some people some upset. But the next step is making sure that CCR data comes back properly, and it can be better possibly than Pig Health there, because it comes back on every load. But while we were doing it in duplication alongside, there was absolutely no incentive for CCIR to get any better.
And that is an important point here, isn't it? Sometimes when the levy can't fund something, people do realise the value of the independent pump priming and things that the levy has got going. And actually there is an opportunity for other people to come in and fund this work,
Absolutely.
isn't there? We have made it ready. Okay, so I'm wondering if any of you are sitting out there thinking that you've got any other questions. Please do fire them in. Here we have one. Clearly pork is never going to get over the growing requirement for halal meat in schools. What new domestic markets are you looking for elsewhere in the public sector? It's interesting, isn't it, the public sector, because everybody's on a budget, aren't they, at the moment? Pork's good value, but meat's still quite expensive overall. So it's an interesting area here.
Was this one of the sort of considerations when we viewed if there was somebody else doing this in the market, then it wasn't AHDB's position to do it? And so of the processor representatives on the board, that they all had people in a lot larger budget and a lot more people in that department looking at those new markets, so that we weren't going to duplicate what was already going on.
So what we're saying there is that AHDB is that voice to the end consumer, but the people who, the different channels might well be addressed by different commercial arrangements within the industry.
With public sector buying is very much on a shoestring, and a lot of that public sector meat is coming in from abroad. We have to face we're not the lowest cost producers in Europe or in the world, so probably it's more a job for the National Pig Association to put some pressure on government so that the public sector buying does actually represent what the government rules are on welfare and et cetera, on our standards. But at the moment, they're very much buying on the price.
Okay.
But it's a challenge. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, the halal issue is a serious one. It's a point well made by the questioner. The influence of flexitarianism, you know, is another challenge. You know, it's not that we're not eating meat anymore. It's just we're eating less of it, and that's a serious challenge to all meat protein sectors. We do have to rise to that challenge, and it's a dynamic situation.
So we've talked lots about the 3 different themes: marketing, export, and reputation. There's a question here which is a good segue actually. What's happening with KT, KE, and training, etc.? So we've got all this product, and products, tools, and services for levy payers. Mike, I'm going to go to you first. What's your thought on that?
I think that we are absolutely determined that we definitely need a human face out there in front of our levy payers, whether it's visiting an individual levy payer or whether it's at a pig club meeting or at a local conference or wherever it may be. It's very important that we have a human face out there. And it's very important that those people are able to both communicate the range of work which we are carrying out on behalf of levy payers, directly to levy payers, but also gather intelligence to feed back into AHDB so that we can adjust what we are doing according to the challenges faced by our levy payers. In other words, that human face is part of the dialogue. It's part of the exchange of views, exchange of wishes between levy payers and between AHDB. So we will have a team out there engaging with our levy payers. What will change is the menu that team offers, if you like. And that doesn't mean to say that there won't be a menu. There will be a menu that team will offer, but it won't be the same as it was before.